the Constitution of India as applicable in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Third is the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. And fourth is Article 370. And the interaction between these three constitutions in the context of Article 370 is something that your lordships will have to look at as we move forward. But please keep that in mind. The reason why I say Constitution of India is applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that over time, there were several orders issued, constitutional orders from time to time, which were incorporated in the Constitution of India as applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. The result was that most of the powers most of the responsibilities and powers were actually in tandem with the Constitution of India. There was in fact really no difference other than Article 370 itself. All the laws were applicable, except that those laws were replicated in the constitutional orders of the government of India. Well, as your lordship, just a historical fact, at that point in time, Sheikh Abdullah was in prison. And he had been always against the ruler, because he wanted the will of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and not a despotic ruler. So he was against the Sadr-e Riyasat, so to say. But when he realized that, look, unless I get him on my side, I'm not going to be able to defend. So he released him and said, you form the interim government. Just a historical fact. That's how it happened. Yeah, no, I know that, but I don't want to bring politics into it. The moment I take somebody's name, they'll be the other side. No. Nehru had nothing to do with it. So I don't want to enter into politics here. No politics. I don't want fireworks in a very solemn occasion like this. Because there, my learned colleague points out that there are very interesting snippets, the transfer of power documents as to how this happened, and VP Menon actually sets it out.
I just told them they were 7 miles from the Srinagar.
Yes.
When the army was asked to.
Absolutely. Electricity, was everything. And they could not be controlled, they were raiders, so there was no choice. I mean, he never wanted to exceed, but there was no choice. So, may I, page 9. Whereas the Indian Independence Act 1947 provides that as, it's obvious, 15th August was independence. He did not immediately accede. All the other Maharajas acceded apart from those two, Junagadh and Hyderabad. He never wanted to. It's only in October that this happened. Whereas the Indian Independence Act 1947 provides that as from the 15th day of August 1947, there shall be set up an independent dominion known as India, and that the Government of India Act 1935 shall, with such omissions, additions, adaptations, and modifications that the Governor General may by order specify, be applicable to the Dominion of India. And whereas the Government of India Act 1935, as so adopted by the Governor General, provides that an Indian state may accede to the Dominion of India by an instrument of accession executed by the ruler thereof. Now, therefore, I, Shriman Inder Mahendra Rajeshwar Maharaj Viraj Sri Hari Singh Ji, Jammu and Kashmir Naresh, Tatha Tibet and Deshadipati, ruler of Jammu and Kashmir state, in the exercise of my sovereignty in and over my said state, do hereby execute this instrument. I hereby declare that I accede to the Dominion of India with the intent that the Governor General of India, the Dominion Legislature, the Federal Court, and any other Dominion authority established for the purposes of the Dominion shall, by virtue of this my instrument of accession, but subject always to the terms thereof. I need mark that. Subject always to the terms thereof, and for the purposes only of the Dominion, exercise in relation to the state of Jammu and Kashmir such functions as may be vested in them by or under the Government of India Act 1935, as in force in the Dominion of India on the 15th day of August 1947. Such functions that may be vested. I hereby assume the obligation of ensuring that due effect is given to the provisions of the Act within the state, so far as they are applicable therein by virtue of my instrument of accession. I accept the matters specified in the schedule hereto as the matters with respect to which the Dominion Legislature may make law for this state. I hereby declare that I accede to the Dominion of India on the assurance that if an agreement is made between the Governor General and the ruler of this state, whereby any functions in relation to the administration of this state of any law of the Dominion Legislature shall be exercised by the ruler of the state, that any such agreement shall be construed and have effect accordingly. In terms of this instrument of accession, my instrument of accession shall not be varied by any amendment of the Act or the Indian Independence Act 1947, unless such amendment is accepted by me by instruments supplementary to this instrument. Nothing in this instrument shall empower the Dominion Legislature to make any law for this state authorizing the compulsory acquisition of land for any purpose. But I hereby undertake that should the Dominion for the purpose of a Dominion law, which applies in the state, deem it necessary to acquire any land, I will at their request acquire the land at their expense, or if the land belongs to me, transfer it to them on such terms as may be agreed, or in default of agreement determined by an arbitrator to be appointed by the Chief Justice of India. Nothing in this instrument shall be deemed to commit in any way to my acceptance of any future constitution of India, or to fetter my discretion to enter into an agreement with the government of India under any such future constitution. Nothing in this instrument affects the continuance of my sovereignty in and over this state, or save as provided by or under this instrument, the exercise of any powers, authority, and rights now enjoyed by me as a ruler of this state, or the validity of any law at present in force in this state. I hereby declare and I execute this instrument on behalf of the state, and that any reference to this instrument to me or to the ruler of the state is to be construed as including reference to my heirs and successors. And the acceptance your lordships will find at 11. I hereby accept this instrument of accession, dated this 27th day of October, 1947. Now, the point that I'm making here is very simple, that the government of the day accepted the fact that our relationships with the Jammu and Kashmir government are on a separate footing. The provisions of the Constitution, unless made applicable through a presidential order and agreed to by the government, shall not apply. The residuary power will vest in the state. It is the state which must pass laws. The government of India can't, under the issue of repugnancy doesn't apply. So this status is accepted. That's how 370 came into being. The formation of a constituent assembly is a political exercise to ensure that people within the territory of a particular region, their aspirations are taken into account to formulate a law and a constitution to ensure that those aspirations are met in future times to come. It's not a law-making exercise. Then they framed the constitution to take into account those aspirations. That's how our republic came into force. Because there was the 1935 Act, there was diversity. Well, let's kindly look at it historically. Let's not forget the law for the moment. Look at it historically. If you look at Europe and the making of the nation states in Europe, how did that happen? It happened because there were large empires, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Prussian Empire. And whereas those large empires had communities and within those empires, there were peoples of different languages, of different cultures, of different ethnic lot. So it is the breakup of the empire that led to the rise of the nation state, the Treaty of Utrecht, the 1848 revolutions. Right? In India, the process was the opposite. It's the only exception. The process was just the opposite. There was disparity. There were existing disparities. There were 562 princely states. There were states, which were part of the British Crown. They had to be amalgamated, and each of them had certain conditions. But then ultimately they all agreed, okay, for the states that were part of 562, all agreed. But this particular state of Jammu and Kashmir was an exception. And the exception was constitutionally engrafted in Article 370. And the terms of the exception were constitutionally engrafted in 370. You can't jettison the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir and decide that then what's the difference between this and whether it's the act of the crown? What's the difference between this and the annexation of Junagadh? Or the annexation of Hyderabad? Then it's an act of paramountcy that I am the union and I will decide. When you have constitutionally committed yourself that if this is to be done, you have to follow a process which two sovereign authorities have agreed upon and it grafted in Article 370. Otherwise, then it's exercise of paramount power.